Hi, everyone. I'm Bill Crowley, and I'm TechTarget's Executive Vice President. And one of the things that we try to do regularly for our senior exec customers is to have discussions with industry leaders about issues that are consistently challenges and opportunities. Things that are not just like based on what's going on in the world, but just are part of the marketing and sales and go-to-market challenge. So for most of these issues, there isn't a single answer. It's just choices that work for a particular company in its market, in its moment of development and the competitive situation. And what we found is one of those evergreen issues is how to organize and execute on international marketing, especially on the digital side. And one of the core issues is kind of what to keep in headquarters in the US and what to distribute to the field. And I myself have got a particular interest in this because I led TechTarget's international business from the UK for a number of years. And I've seen a lot of things that work and maybe even more that didn't. So in that vein, we organized this chat with Mandeep Khera, who is the Global VP of Demand Generation and Marketing at Gigamon. And to my mind, is one of the more thoughtful people in the B2B tech industry in the topic. So Mandeep, thanks for joining us today. And I'm going to kick us off with the first question is tell us a little bit about your career history to get here in Gigamon as a company that gives some people some context about how you come to the choices that we'll talk about next.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me, Bill, and thank you for the opportunity. So I've been in Silicon Valley for over now 25 years, a lot of global marketing roles in various size companies, from very large companies like HP, to very small companies in different industries. And it's been mostly global marketing, handling worldwide transactions and issues and all of that. Last, I would say 17, 18 years in cybersecurity, a few years in IoT. But I've also covered enterprise software and CRM space, logistics management, and others as well. So pretty wide coverage. And I've also held positions besides marketing in sales and business development, and also as a VP of engineering, believe it or not, one time in marketing. But marketing has been the main theme. So I joined Gigamon about 11 months ago. And one of the reasons why I joined Gigamon was because of the culture and the people. When I talk to you, I'm always excited to work with smart people who are compatible, team players, collaborative, right? Those things are very high on my list. And Gigamon scored very high. I had multiple offers as CMO even, but I just felt this was the right fit from culture and interaction point of view. And so far it's been great. I mean, Gigamon has this culture called One Gigamon, where everyone collaborates. And whether it's in your area or not, you go out and help others, right? Which has been awesome. So no regrets so far.
That's great. I mean, that's a topic onto itself that worth a conversation about culture and marketing organizations. And one that from our side as a vendor to the industry, I think we see outputs about that, but probably not as much insight as other people. So maybe we can come back to that in another discussion. But on this topic, tell me about the functions and responsibilities for your marketing that you decided to centralize in the Gigamon model. Just tell us what you've done there.
Yeah, so at a high level, we keep anything digital from a decision-making point of view central. So in my global budget, for example, I have allocated percentage for EMEA and APAC for digital marketing, so we figure out where it makes sense. Also overall strategy for content, email messaging, and those types of things. And then the other piece that we are beyond the digital piece, we just launched ABM recently, ABM campaign. We've always done, or not always, for the last couple of years, we've done ABM one-to-many. So, we're going after our targeted list of roughly 5,000. But recently we moved on to one-to-few, so roughly about 300 plus accounts ABM globally. So we created the strategy, we launched it. And so that's been kind of pushed out from the headquarters, but we want to make sure we are getting the local teams involved in every step of the way, right? So it's not saying, hey, this is the strategy, go do it. We're constantly working with them and saying, does this make sense for you? Like, for example, when we were creating the ABM account list, right? We defined the criteria. We said it'll be existing customers and new prospects, in which industries we want to focus on, right? So at a high level. And then we came up with the initial list, and then we went back and forth with all sales teams, including Americas and EMEA and APAC, and then finalize it. So that process took a while, but we make sure that we are keeping them involved at every step of the way.
Yeah. And so when you think about that, what responsibilities do you leave to the regions? I mean, we will talk a little bit later about the intense communications that you have with them, but like, what do you say, no, this is your call and this is your responsibility in the region?
Yeah, so the field marketing teams, the EMEA and APAC, they obviously handle all the local events, right? So the trade shows, virtual events now, which is in this new environment. Also, the BDR, the business development rep teams are localized as well, so for qualifying leads. And then also some nuances, right? So for example, when we have some email or content that's English written, we want to make sure it's translated obviously in French or German and Spanish in local geographies. So the local teams take those and then work with their local vendors or local teams to do the translation and those types of things. Another nuance, I would give you an example of, we launched a campaign a couple of months ago where we wanted to offer some kind of a gift card for a meeting, right? And we launched that in the US first, and it was extremely successful. We started getting a lot more meetings for this gift card, which was amazing. So we tried to launch it in EMEA and APAC. There was some resistance initially. So we said, okay, why don't we offer, instead of Amazon or Grubhub, let's try $50, for example, for a charity. So that started getting traction, right? And then eventually people started getting used to the idea of Amazon and other gift cards. So there are nuances that we always look for. And then if we need to tweak the model, we do that with the local teams.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's one of the things we see people over is how do you, the communication, you can use it to overcome that sometimes that culture of, well, that doesn't work here, right? But if you feed them iteratively, you sort of get to something good. So, in this model where, it's really important to stay in communication, give us an example of some of the processes that you use to keep this communication running, or the situations you had to mediate that have made this model kind of work.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is that communication, right? So we don't want to be sitting in an ivory tower and saying thou shalt, right? That's not the model we want. It's a team, it's a collaborative environment. So we do a lot of communications. We do weekly funnel meetings. We do marketing interlock meetings across the globe, and we have to change the time zones all the time to accommodate everyone. So we're always sharing. We always have even demand gen specific meetings, metrics meetings, and we're an extremely metrics driven company, which is great. Our CMO truly believes in metrics and data, and so we live and breathe data. Morning, evening, I go to bed, I'm looking at data before I go to bed. So we're extremely metrics driven, and that helps, right? Because now we can look at if there are any headwinds coming in any specific region, and even sub-regions, and then we can talk about that in our regular cadence meetings and say, hey, what's happening? How come you're not having enough meetings? Or why are there so many open MQLs, right? So all that conversation is very active and almost over communication, which is a good thing. Also, at the content level, for example, we have content governance meetings on a regular basis. We have editorial meetings, so we're always looking at the content that's coming up and what's needed, what we have for different campaigns across the globe, US, EMEA, and APAC, right? And then we adjust our planning calendar based on that as well. So a lot of touch points, which I think is what you need in this.
And what my experience when I was overseas was around this content governance thing. I thought that sounded like a really interesting point, because that would be so often the debate between the US marketer and the regional marketer. Like, no one cares about this topic, or they gave me this thing that I'm really not happy with. And I thought that the idea of a governing council, while it sounds awfully bureaucratic, it's actually addressing an issue that people are constantly suffering with and want, especially in the regions, want to feel like the U.S. is hearing them on that. So, I as we talked about that, I thought an editorial function seemed to me to be something that makes a lot of sense, to hold those people in close to the strategy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's You know, like I said, it sounds bureaucratic, but it's not, right? It's really communication saying, hey, are we all on the same page? And you guys decide what changes do we need to make? You know, as we plan for next month, next quarter, next rest of the year. And for example, we're going through now second half planning, right? So we're coming up with very creative ideas globally and asking everyone. And we're having brainstorming sessions. We're having, you know, our marketing QBR, you know, starting next week, pretty extensive over 3 days, involving global teams, right? So we're asking them to share their ideas and collectively as a group. So all of that makes a huge difference because everyone feels involved in the strategy, and then we're getting input from people in the trenches instead of sitting in the ivory tower. And
yeah. I mean, I think if you have to be engaging about what content they want and the metrics they're actually seeing, like, you know, you can't, you're never going to be seen as too far away if you're engaging
right.
in the problem, right?
Exactly.
So, you know, you work with Priority Engine and TechTarget globally. You know, can you give some examples about how you may work with us or, you know, other vendors on a global scale to help this or hurt this, or, you know, what are your experiences on that front?
Yeah, no, I think so. TechTarget has been a great partner for me, you know, ever since I started, and for our entire team. So we've been using TechTarget for various different things, right? So Priority Engine, content syndication, as well as confirmed projects, HQL and SQOs. And it's been extremely useful because we can do very targeted messaging, very targeted demand gen campaigns with TechTarget, and that helps a lot because, you know, these days you can't just buy lists and just send emails, right? Because that's the laws against it.
Yeah.
People are not as responsive sometimes to the emails, but especially when it's cold. Nurturing emails are fine. So a lot of the top of the funnel and even middle of the funnel type of demand gen programs, TechTarget has been very helpful. And we've been by and large running globally, but then also having the local teams work with the local TechTarget teams. So, you know, from a strategy point of view, we know that at a high level, we want to focus on this target list, this type of content, and these types of titles, right, that we want. And then we work with your team to figure out how do we get those titles and where from. And then the local teams work with the local team, local TechTarget teams to make sure all of that is coordinated. So it's been working out great.
That's great. I really appreciate the, you know, the good feedback. And I'd say it helps us a lot. We've got like a willing and intelligent partner that's, you know, engaging openly. It makes all the difference in the world in all our regions. So, you know, talk about like when you're going through changes like COVID-19 or something exogenous coming into your market, you know, how has the model or team responded in that world? Like, you know, when, I mean, change happens, whether you bring it or someone else does. Tell me a little bit about, you know, how you feel like this approach helps you respond or the challenges in that.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So when COVID-19 kicked in back in March, officially mid-March for us, March 11th, I still remember. And we, as a marketing organization, and our CMO is great about this, we were very agile and we actually pivoted. I think we were one of the first few companies from marketing point of view to pivot very quickly, right? So the entire team, the corporate marketing, product marketing, my team, we all worked together and really came up with new messaging very quickly. And then not only that, you know, so the new messaging at that time obviously was working from home, right? Everyone was starting to go back to home. But then now that people are starting to go back to work, you know, and some people are getting tired of that working from home message, we're pivoting again, right? So our Gigamon provides at a high level, we provide network visibility and analytics on the traffic, so information in motion across physical, virtual, and cloud infrastructures, right? So, and the great part about that is we help in improving network performance, like bandwidth issues, which is a huge issue right now because everyone is using Zoom and everyone is working remotely. It also helps in security. So we have specific cases for SSL decryption and those types of things. And also it helps in digital transformation, which a lot of people now, again, because of this new environment, they're trying to move to digital transformation, right? So and network visibility helps them do a good migration from digital transformation point of view. And the best part about this is that we help in improving ROI, immediate cost savings. So because the way our product is structured, we can control the traffic and optimize traffic that to other tools. We can drastically reduce that because a lot of that traffic is duplicate, redundant, and all of that. We can use all of that traffic. So we save a lot of money. So it's like an instant buy, right? So now we're pivoting to that message because we're saying, okay, so work from home is no longer as critical as people get back to reality and getting back to work. So our message now is ROI, and hey, you have less money, you have to do more with less, while making sure you move to digital transformation and making sure you're getting optimal network performance and security. We give all that. So now we are moving drastically to that message. And so you'll see all the new messaging coming on that over the next few weeks, including all the things we'll do with TechTarget and messaging and white papers and all of that stuff. So yeah, I mean, we've adapted very well. We're very agile. We had a great Q2 from both marketing and sales point of view. So all those things are panning out for us beautifully.
Yeah, that's really, first of all, great. A great story that like not only the responsiveness of the team, but also the product itself has a role to play in the change. And I think that, one of the parts that occurs to me as you talk there is that, when you have a centralized, dedicated content team, they can respond much faster because they know it's their job. And when you have those roles kind of blended into a multi-function marketing job in a region, as they all are, it's much harder for them to respond quickly to these things.
Yes.
But if they're giving you feedback and then you're responding quickly, in many ways, sometimes a central world can be more responsive than something that is distributed, where they'll get to it when they get to it, but they've got to, focus on other things regionally, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I think that is a huge benefit for sure.
Yeah, it's really good. So, we talked about some of the things that worked here, but if you were to sum up pros and talk about some of the cons the tensions you feel in this structure, what would you say?
Yeah, I think I would say the pros would be obviously centralized messaging, ability to move quickly, as you pointed out, right? The agility, and making sure we are getting economies of scope and economies of scale, right? By centralizing a lot of that messaging content from one location. So there are a lot of good pros, right, for doing that. But at the same time, allowing local teams to give a lot of input, a lot of feedback. So it's more of a back and forth and teamwork environment. I think that combination helps a lot because you're not alienating regional teams and you're controlling some of the messaging and rollout. I would say, cons-wise, there are not that many cons except for a lot of extra collaboration, right? As I mentioned earlier, we do need a lot more communications, and sometimes the time zone differences and those types of things, early morning calls, late. Some of our APAC folks have been on the calls there, 10 o'clock their time, 11 o'clock their time at night, right? Same with EMEA. A lot of times we have to start calls here at 6 a.m. in the Pacific Coast. So those types of adjustments, obviously a lot of Zoom meetings and Zoom fatigue. So those are, I would say, some cons, but not major. It's part of doing business, and I think everyone is used to it. So
yeah. Well, I think that really covers. We want to keep this sort of brief, but we covered a lot of ground, Mandeep, and I think it's really insightful from the stuff that you said. And I appreciate you as a partner here, and thanks so much for joining us and sharing it. I really appreciate it.
No, absolutely. Thank you for having me, and stay safe.
You too. Cheers. Bye-bye.
I think.